Sean Hepburn Ferrer's hands trembled as he held the sealed envelope. It was January 20th, 2003. Exactly 10 years since his mother had died, 10 years since Audrey Hepburn had slipped away quietly in her Swiss home, leaving the world in mourning. And 10 years since she'd left this letter with her lawyer, with specific instructions. Do not open until a decade has passed. Do not read it before both sons are ready. His younger brother Luca sat beside him in the study of their mother's Tolokana's home. The same room where Audrey had spent her final months. The same desk where she'd written this letter. Outside, the January snow fell softly over the Swiss countryside, just as it had the day she died. Neither brother spoke. They just stared at the envelope, their mother's handwriting on the front, elegant and precise even in her final weeks. To my beloved sons, to be opened January 20th, 2003. Sean broke the seal, and what he read in the next 10 minutes would change everything he thought he knew about his mother's life, her pain, and the secrets she'd carried alone. But to understand why this letter mattered, you need to go back. Back to late 1992, back to when Audrey Hepburn came home from Somalia for the last time. November 1992. Audrey arrived in Switzerland weighing barely 98 pounds. She'd spent the previous months working with UNICEF in Somalia, witnessing famine, death, and human suffering on a scale that broke something inside her. The trip had taken everything she had left to give, and she had nothing left. Her sons immediately knew something was wrong. This wasn't just exhaustion. This was something deeper, something final. "I'm just tired," Audrey told them, smiling that smile she'd perfected over decades. The smile that said everything was fine, even when it wasn't. "I'll rest for a few weeks and be good as new." But she wasn't tired. She was dying. And she knew it. The abdominal pain had started in Somalia, but she'd ignored it, pushed through it. There were children who needed help. Her discomfort seemed trivial compared to their suffering, but by the time she got home, she could barely stand upright. The doctors found it quickly, appendiceal cancer, rare, aggressive, already advanced beyond the point where treatment would likely help. They could try surgery, chemotherapy, but the prognosis was clear. Months, maybe, not years. Audrey refused aggressive treatment. She'd seen too much death in her life. Starvation in Holland during the war. Her father abandoning the family. Multiple failed marriages. She'd learned that you couldn't control everything. Sometimes you just had to accept what was coming with grace. "I want to be here," she told her sons. "In this house, with my garden, with my family. I don't want to spend my last months in hospitals fighting a battle I can't win." Sean and Luca protested. There were new treatments, experimental options. They could fly her to the best cancer centers in the world, but Audrey was firm. This was her death. She would face it on her terms. In early December, she called her lawyer. "I need you to help me with something unusual," she said. "I want to write letters to my sons, but I don't want them to read these letters immediately after I'm gone. They'll be too raw, too grieving. They won't be able to hear what I need to say." The lawyer suggested she could seal the letters with instructions to open them after a specific period. 1 year, 5 years, however long she wanted. Audrey thought about it carefully. 10 years, she finally said. 10 years should be enough time for the grief to soften, for them to have lived enough life to understand what I want to tell them. She started writing on December 15th, 1992. Some days she could only manage a few sentences before the pain became too much. Other days, she wrote for hours, her elegant handwriting filling page after page. She would stop occasionally, looking out the window at her garden, at the bare trees waiting for spring she wouldn't see. What was she writing? Her sons didn't know. She kept the letters private, locked in her desk drawer. Sometimes they would find her crying softly as she wrote, but when they asked if she was okay, she would smile and say she was just being sentimental. remembering happy times. On Christmas Day, 1992, Audrey gathered her strength for one final celebration with her family. She wore a simple sweater and slacks, no makeup, no performance, just a dying mother trying to give her sons one last beautiful memory. They opened presents, ate dinner together. Audrey barely touched her food, but she smiled and laughed and pretended everything was normal. At one point, Sean found her alone in the kitchen, steadying herself against the counter, her face tight with pain. "Mom, maybe you should lie down." "Not yet," she whispered. "Let me have this. Just a few more hours of being your mother instead of a dying woman." The day after Christmas, she finished the letter, sealed it, gave it to her lawyer with her final instructions. 10 years from the day I die. Not before. Promise me. On January 20th, 1993, Audrey Hepburn died in her sleep. She was 63 years old. The world mourned the loss of an icon. Presidents made statements. Fellow actors wept on television. Millions of people who'd never met her felt like they'd lost someone precious. But Sean and Luca lost their mother. And in their grief, they forgot about the letter. Or maybe they remembered but couldn't think about it. 10 years seemed like forever when you'd just lost the person you loved most in the world. Life continued. Sean wrote a book about his mother, became a painter and sculptor, worked to preserve her legacy through the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund. Luca started a family, worked in graphics and visual arts. Both of them tried to live in ways that would make their mother proud. But they carried questions. Things they wished they'd asked her. Conversations they wished they'd had. Why had she always seemed so sad even when she was smiling? Why had she never talked about her own childhood? Why had she given so much of herself to UNICEF, to helping children she'd never meet, when sometimes her own sons felt like they were competing for her attention? And then January 20th, 2003 arrived. 10 years. The lawyer contacted them both. "There's something your mother left for you. She wanted you to wait. Now it's time." That's how they ended up in her study, holding an envelope that had been sealed for a decade, holding their breath, about to hear their mother's voice again after 10 years of silence. Sean read aloud, slowly, his voice breaking occasionally. Luca sat perfectly still, tears streaming down his face. The letter started simply, "My darling boys, if you're reading this, 10 years have passed since I left you. I hope they've been good years. I hope you've found love, purpose, and peace. I hope you've forgiven me for the ways I failed you." Failed them? They looked at each other. Their mother? The woman everyone called a saint? What did she think she'd failed at? She continued, "I need to tell you things I could never say while I was alive. Things I was too ashamed of, too afraid of. I need you to understand why I was the way I was, why I couldn't always be the mother you deserved." The letter went back to Holland, 1944. Audrey was 15 years old. The Nazis had occupied their country for 4 years. Food was scarce. People were dying in the streets. Audrey's own body was shutting down from malnutrition. She weighed less than 90 pounds. Her hair was falling out. Her periods had stopped, but she could still dance. And the Dutch resistance needed money. So Audrey, barely able to stand, would perform secret ballet recitals in people's basements. Audiences would come, pay what they could, and the money would go to the resistance, to help Jewish families hide, to help Allied pilots escape. One night, a Nazi officer found out about a performance, broke down the door, everyone froze. They were caught. They would all be shot, but the officer just stood there, watching. 15-year-old Audrey in a makeshift ballet costume, mid-performance, certain she was about to die. The officer was young, maybe 20. He looked at Audrey for a long time. Then he said quietly in German, "Finish your dance." She did. He watched. When it ended, he turned around and left. Never reported it. Never came back. Probably saved all their lives. Audrey wrote in her letter, I never told anyone this because I was ashamed. Ashamed that I'd survived when so many didn't. Ashamed that a Nazi had shown me mercy when they showed others none. For years I wondered if I'd done something wrong. If I'd somehow collaborated by accepting his mercy. If the people who died deserved their fate more than I deserved mine. The letter continued, explaining her years in Hollywood. The pressure to be perfect, to be elegant, to never show weakness or pain. How she'd built a persona, a character named Audrey Hepburn, and trapped herself inside it. I was never as graceful as the world believed. I was anxious, insecure, terrified of being discovered as a fraud. Every smile in every photograph took effort. Every elegant appearance was a performance. I was so tired of performing, but I didn't know how to stop. She wrote about her failed marriages, about loving men who couldn't love her back in the ways she needed, about the loneliness of being idealized rather than known, about waking up in beautiful houses feeling completely alone. The only place I ever felt real, she wrote, was with children. Children who didn't know who Audrey Hepburn was, who didn't care about my films or my dresses or my image, who just needed someone to hold them, feed them, love them. That's why I gave so much time to UNICEF, because with those children, I didn't have to be Audrey Hepburn. I could just be a mother, and I was never better at anything than I was at being a mother. The letter's final pages were instructions. Not about money or possessions, about how to live. Don't waste energy being perfect. Be real instead. Don't hide your pain. Share it. Don't build walls to protect yourself. Let people in even when it's scary. Don't wait to say the things that matter. Say them now. Don't spend your life performing for an audience. Live for the people who actually know you. And then, the ending. I'm writing this letter in December 1992. I'm dying. I'm in pain. But I'm also more at peace than I've ever been. Because I'm finally being honest, finally admitting that I wasn't the woman everyone thought I was. I was more flawed, more frightened, more human. And that's okay. I hope you can be more human too. I hope you can make the mistakes I was too afraid to make. I hope you can live the messy, imperfect, beautiful lives I was too controlled to live. She signed it simply. Your mother, who loved you more than anything, even when I didn't know how to show it the way you needed. Sean finished reading. Both brothers sat in silence for a long time. The snow continued to fall outside. The room grew darker as afternoon turned to evening. Finally, Luca spoke. She thought she failed us. Yeah. She didn't fail us. No, she didn't. They sat with the letter for hours, reading it again, absorbing it, understanding their mother in ways they never had when she was alive, seeing the scared girl who'd survived the Nazis, the anxious actress who'd smiled through her fear, the lonely woman who'd found purpose in helping others because she couldn't help herself. In the years after reading that letter, both brothers changed. Sean became more open about his own struggles, his own fears, stopped trying to protect his mother's perfect image, and started talking about her real humanity. Luca started working more actively with children's charities, understanding now what his mother had found in that work. The letter stayed private for many years, but eventually portions of it were shared with biographers, with journalists, with people who were trying to understand who Audrey Hepburn really was beyond the carefully constructed icon. And what emerged was more beautiful than the myth. A woman who survived trauma, who struggled with anxiety and insecurity, who built an extraordinary career while carrying extraordinary pain, who gave the world elegance and grace while feeling messy and imperfect inside, who loved her sons desperately while being terrified she wasn't enough. In 2014, Sean published a book called Audrey at Home. In it, he included some passages from the letter. Not everything. Some things were too private, too sacred, but enough to show the world what he'd learned that day in January 2003. His mother wasn't a saint. She was a survivor. And that was so much more inspiring. Because saints don't struggle. Saints don't doubt. Saints don't wake up afraid. But survivors do all those things. And survivors keep going anyway. Survivors take their broken pieces and build something beautiful. Survivors turn their pain into purpose. That's what Audrey Hepburn did. She took the starvation of her childhood and turned it into a mission to feed hungry children. She took the fear of her teenage years and turned it into grace under pressure. She took the loneliness of her Hollywood years and turned it into genuine connection with people who needed her. The letter she left her sons was her final gift. Not money, not fame, but truth. The truth that it's okay to be broken. The truth that perfection is a prison. The truth that the most beautiful thing you can be is honest. 10 years after Audrey died, her sons opened a letter, and they finally met their mother. Not the icon, not the actress, not the image in the photographs, the real woman, scared and brave, broken and whole, human and extraordinary. And that woman was more magnificent than any character she ever played.